Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Golf Committee meeting of Tuesday, December the 5th, 2023. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30, Section 20 regarding public taping, I need to inquire if anyone is. Seeing none. This meeting will be replayed via Xfinity, Channel 8 or High Definition, Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel, live video on demand, archives at the Town of Barnstable's website. With that, we'll take the roll call. Jeff Converse.
Here.
John Cookson.
Present.
Keith Hochstein, present. Suzanne Connolly.
Present.
Mark Bushway. Bill Silva. Jason Orby. Okay. With that, I need to inquire of Jesse whether or not there are any public comments
There are not.
coming your way. No? Then we'll act on the minutes of October the 16th, 2023. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone want to make additions or deletions? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Suzanne,
Second.
thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Next item, Director of Golf Maintenance Report.
All right, it's been a while since we talked. We missed each other last month, but the aeration we did do, I think I've seen some improvement on the roots at both courses on the greens, which is huge. They weren't good, particularly at Hyannis, so that was nice to see. We're still gonna go forward with our deep tining that we normally do. We already started it at Hyannis, so you'll see them over here at Old Barney probably next week doing that. It won't be too disruptive. It's just very slow. There might be a temp green here or there, just so they can keep going. But that's important too. The tines kind of go down 6 to 7 inches and then they shatter, come back out. But they don't, we're gonna roll the greens after. It's not gonna affect play. But that will help with root growth too, and also with drainage over the course of the winter. And then if you've been out there, I'm sure you've seen on the greens at OBF, we've put 2 cups in the greens to try to limit wear and tear. And I've noticed people out there have been good about rotating the sticks back and forth, which is nice. We also put, me, Chris, and Jesse got together and we picked some locations for temporary tees to try to protect our par 3 tees. We just did all that overseeding work this fall, and to chop them up all winter would just be tough to watch. So it's easier to get the grass to grow back in the roughs there.
James, how often do you change the hole locations on the green?
It'll be as needed. You can just tell when you're walking on the green, you'll start to see, a lot of wear and tear around the cups. So the guys will change 2 cups and put them in a different location, if they can. We also have a new style cup cutter, so even if there's a little frost in the ground, it's got like a little hammer action on it, so you can get through that frost layer and change. Because sometimes you go to cut a new cup, and if there's a couple inches of frost, you almost break your wrist. You can't get through it. So, yeah, that won't be an issue. They'll be changed as needed. Dan's pretty good. He's out there all the time on the greens, and he keeps an eye on it. Moving on to Hyannis, we did finish building the new forward tees on 2 and 5. I think they came out great. We used we've used it before. It's called a Black Beauty Tall Fescue. It's designed to be cut low. It kind of fits in with our program. It's what requires less water, less fertilizer. It's resistant to disease and insects. So it's expensive, but it's worth it for us.
Could you describe the location of the new forward tee on 5? I can't remember what.
So it's on the left, a little bit further up from where it was.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think, Jesse?
On the same line?
Decent amount.
Yeah, left rough line. Even more, I would say.
maybe 50
I would
yards.
say 50, 60 yards
Okay.
shortens that hole. It's the exact same yardage now as 13 relative to the bunker.
Oh, okay.
That was important to me because now if somebody says, well, now that bunker's, I've never heard a single complaint about 13. You
Right.
see my point?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now it's basically the exact same shot. You have a little room left to the bunker,
Yep.
but if you can keep the ball in the air for 120 yards or so, then you can go right over it.
Cool.
But it really shortens that hole.
And two, that location down at the bottom of the
Right.
hill near the, not in the wetland, obviously, but,
In front of all
In
the
front of
junk there.
yes,
Yeah.
so that's
Beside it,
the side of it,
yeah. That's
Beside it.
45 yards.
Oh, on
actually
the side
facing-
of it?
yes.
Oh, got it, okay.
You don't have to hit over it.
No.
Oh, no,
Yep.
not any longer, yeah.
It would be
okay.
impressive if somebody could hit it in there from the new tee. That would be
Well, that would be
the
neat.
trick, yeah.
Like, come to one of our matches.
So those came out great. They'll be ready to go in the spring when Hyannis opens back up, which will be great. We also, at the same time, stripped and had several tee boxes over there resodded, the ones that were in rough shape,
Yeah.
7,
Okay,
10 white tee
yeah,
was rough, 12, the upper tees, both of them, mostly due to a shade problem. We need to do some tree work back there. 15, the entire thing, and we did 11 blue at Old Barnstable, which was been in rough shape for quite a while, the blue tee there.
That's like 12 at Hyannis, right? It's just back in a
Shade.
tunnel. Yeah.
And we have it, well, we can't really do tree work in there without conservation approval, it's also wetlands.
wetlands.
But they came out great, super excited to have those open in the spring.
We had talked about the forward tee, 17, the circle one, is that in the works or?
We, actually, the guys, we had some sod left over and they patched it in.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, they did, yeah, we fixed that one too, I forgot about that. We did get a lot of needed fence repair work done at Old Barnstable, and we added some additions where we thought we needed it. I don't know if some of you might remember, there used to be fence on every hole in this golf course. And as it slowly deteriorated at the time, the money wasn't there, and we just kind of got rid of it. And in a lot of sections, we're losing turf to encroaching car traffic. So we're slowly starting to reinstall certain areas. Hyannis, we haven't gotten to it yet, but we want to also do that too, along some of the new car paths to protect the grass we want to grow.
may I ask a question? And this might be my misremembering, but on 10,
10.
to the left of the green, the fencing there.
Yes,
Did we eliminate an opening when you did those fences?
I don't believe so.
I thought, all right, I might be misremembering.
There was a bunker there.
There's a bunker
Right,
there and
yeah.
there's an opening sort of
We
near-
extended it back further.
Okay, so you didn't eliminate any openings
No.
to the green, okay, all right. I couldn't remember, I was, when you're in the back of the green, I thought there was a little opening there.
There is,
There
yeah.
is.
There's one way in the back corner towards the car path to
Right.
go to 11, and there's
Okay.
also an opening where someone would park the cart on the left.
For the bunker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
after the bunker.
Well, the front of the green,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Fall cleanups ongoing at both courses.
Lots of leaves, huh?
They're all down now. Yep. Old Barnstable's actually pretty close to being done. The guys have done a great job. The front nine's pretty much done. They're working on the back today. They'll be done this week.
Wow.
Hyannis, as usual, that's just a whole different animal over
Yeah.
there. Those guys, I mean, it's just a never-ending battle of leaves and pine
Yeah.
needles there. That usually takes them by the end of the month, and they're pretty much wrapped up. Other than that, on our end, all we really have left that's a big deal maintenance-wise is our snow mold spray, which is our last spray of the year, which is not your traditional spray anymore. We just kind of go out with our mineral oil and hope for the best. And we put in it's like an anti-desiccant, it's called. It's a waxy substance that kind of protects the greens from cold temperatures and wind.
Cool.
But it's worked out well for us the last few years, even without well, granted, we don't get much snow, or we haven't.
Not as much as the rest of the state.
Right. but always good to cover up. It's just a little scary not having a traditional fungicide in there. Other than that, the Audubon thing, I'm wrapping up kind of step one of that process, and moving forward, it's going to take up a good chunk of my time this winter. The 6 categories that they want you to dive into, I have to address each one individually into more detail and submit that to them before they'll come down for a site visit. So that's going to occupy probably most of my time this winter. So
That's good.
I have made some progress, but I'm looking forward to actually having a chance to, dedicate a lot more time to it.
Good.
So,
That's good.
other than that, that's all I had.
James, can you go through how you make the decision of closing the course down because you damaged the course as opposed to keeping it open?
As far as weather conditions, or
Yeah, weather conditions and,
I mean, for example, this past Monday, we couldn't allow carts. Me and Chris took a drive around out there, and it was just, we could just tell from a quick drive, and the puddles out in the fairways, we were going to get damaged. Same thing when you come to a green, when it's that soft and you're looking at foot traffic on these things. It's we definitely go out there and evaluate every day when we have a weather event, for sure.
and then you say go or no go or?
Right, and
Yeah.
we're always in communication with either Mary or Tom or whoever's in the pro shop, and fill them in on like, hey, this is, when we try to make that as early as possible, because we know that phone rings right away. So, no, between myself, Chris, and the assistant supers, we're always good about making those decisions early. But yeah, sometimes it's a tough call because you want to be open. We don't want to be closed, but sometimes we have no choice. We got to protect those greens, especially. But I mean, the fairways sometimes the cart. It's incredible what a cart will do to a soaked fairway.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions? James, I have a question that I hope I know the answer to, but are we on track for having Old Barnstable re-rated next spring? And by doing so, we can legitimatize the distances? And also, are we on track therefore to have the hybrid course open?
I believe Vinny is coming to re-rate.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So we're on schedule with
I
that?
think Vinny said May.
May,
I need to sit down with him and Mary. And we will have the hybrid.
and we will have the hybrid.
And that's just a matter of getting scorecards printed.
Right,
And,
right.
It's, doesn't change the golf course.
No,
But yes, Mary, Vinny and I will meet very soon. I actually just talked to Vinny about that a few days ago.
okay. Because that hybrid course, just like it does at Hyannis, a lot of people love it. Many of the guys I play with love it. And I'm sure they're gonna feel the same way, especially when we move back the whites
Right.
to the appropriate distance. Then they'll have the option of either playing the whites, a legitimate 6,000 yard course, or move up to a hybrid program.
I think it's important to have symmetrical yardage gaps, though the only thing I want to make sure to avoid is not having a bunch of holes that are the exact same yardage.
Right.
Because that's when you start talking hybrids, you make the long holes shorter, you make the shorter holes longer, and all of a sudden, every hole is 350 yards. And that's not
Okay.
fun.
No,
So
we don't
that's
wanna do
that's
that.
what we, right.
You don't wanna do that.
Yeah.
What else was I gonna ask you about that? Is there a specific number of holes needed to make a course a hybrid?
No.
No, so the
Literally be
MGA,
one. Yep.
in terms of the,
Doesn't have to be 9 and 9
No,
or anything.
no. so
No.
that decision will be made by you and Mary?
Correct. Yes. I don't know if
What-
James and or Chris would want to have
Okay.
input. I mean, they're out there more than anybody seeing, what golfers are doing. And if they see a hole where golfers, every time I look over, there's somebody in that bunker, well, then that obviously will, they'll
Right.
have stake in what we do. But no, there's no, it's kind of a free-for-all.
So
There's
it's just gonna be based upon
Yep.
You
Just
know,
making sure
again,
it's
number
rated.
9 and number 11 are two holes that quickly come to mind.
Yep.
But there's a couple of other holes you would add to that as well.
And Vinny can go on Google Earth and he can tell me, if I tell him what I'm thinking, he can get back to me the next day and say, okay, if you did that, here's the new rating.
Okay,
Or not new rating, well, it would be a new rating, but it's a new golf course,
All right.
in theory.
so people can look forward to that early summer.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
that's great.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to the Director of Golf report.
All right. So earlier today, I know it was kind of last minute, but it just went live this morning. I sent you all the, Chris Canella did the Discover Barnstable podcast. He actually filmed that, I think almost 2 weeks ago, but it just went live today. I'll be sending that out for anybody at home. It's on the homepage of the Town of Barnstable website, Discover
Discover
Barnstable.
Barnstable.
or video. You can get to it a bunch of different ways. Videos on demand, podcasts. Videos on demand is how I got to it. But a lot of good information. Some of it may be redundant in what I'm about to go over, but a lot of good info. I'll be sending that out to the membership as a whole. A link to that maybe Friday, but I want to get that out there. So he spoke with Sarah Beal for about, I think it was 16 minutes, and pretty much covered where we stand and what we still have left in front of us, which is substantial.
Well, not to interrupt
Yeah, yeah,
you in your report, but I watched it today, and it will help people understand why we will not be able to open that restaurant.
Yeah.
Probably anytime next year, maybe.
Correct. Right. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
building issues and then there's licensing issues.
Right.
They're overlapping kind of, but they're separate issues. So as far as the Hyannis Clubhouse update, the elephant in the room kind of, the DPW is working on finishing up surveying the site. They were there today for a potential new water service required for the fire suppression system. So they're out there in the parking lot figuring out the best way to basically get a main line from a fire hydrant into the building.
It sounded like from what Chris said, there'd be a separate, is 5-inch?
6-inch.
6, right.
Oh, 6.
Yeah, then the line that's out there I think is only 4.
4.
So right. So
That's crazy.
I know. And then it gets complicated because we're going right through Eversource's easement too. So now they're in the mix.
Yeah, Barnstable a favor too. So.
I am praying that this work isn't done in April or May. When,
Oh, right.
When, the golf course is open and now we have half a parking lot.
It might have to be though.
We'll see. Fortunately, we did receive approval to have a lift installed instead of an elevator.
Good.
So some significant savings there.
Much more simple.
We have I believe just this morning, received, what I'm reading right now is kind of a hybrid between my information and Chris's. We've received 90% construction drawings from Habib and Associates, the architectural firm that we have. They're in the process of being reviewed in-house by our people before going out for construction estimates. So basically this allows us to work towards a settlement with our insurance provider and then ultimately get it posted for bid solicitation. We've submitted a CIP, a capital improvement project, to cover the funds that will be needed for any and all clubhouse upgrades not related to the claim. I think I've gone over this before. HVAC, plumbing, electrical systems, window trim, some of the stuff that we want to upgrade but isn't necessarily related to the claim, so insurance won't cover it.
Would you throw the cost of the lift in there too?
No,
You can't?
that will be covered by insurance.
Oh, that
Because
will
it's
be.
because it's part of getting the building up to
yeah,
code.
ADA, okay,
As
yeah.
will the fire suppression, the
Yeah.
ADA reconfiguration for the bathrooms, that's all covered by insurance. I'm talking, if we're upgrading the heat, the HVAC system, that has nothing to do with
Right.
the claim, so that's on us. But it's the right time to do it.
So the AAA-B considerations like a lift or an elevator,
Right.
that all gets covered when a building is
Yep.
renovated after
Yep.
damage like this?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
And it kicks in, I think, at 30, once you're spending 30% of the estimated value of the
Yeah.
building, that's when that triggers that. So, and that took a long time for the insurance company to take our word for it on that. We could tell them, oh yeah, no, we have to do this. And
Yeah.
their legal department was confirming, because they're from Maryland.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
they're unfamiliar with Massachusetts code.
Right,
Um,
interesting.
We received a quote to extend the lease of the temporary Pro Shop trailer through November of next year. We're working towards procuring payments with our insurance company. So that gives you an idea of we're pretty much resigned to being in that trailer all of next year.
Yeah.
The insurance part of this is a little tricky because we need, let's say they were ready to give us a check and take off next month. We still need some of these things to be, payment be directed through them because they're not subject to procurement rules like we are.
Right,
So if suddenly they said, okay, here's your check, goodbye, and now we're the ones writing the check to the, say, the trailer company, now all of a sudden all the procurement rules kick in, and that would be insane to have to go back out to bid for something that's already literally anchored into our parking lot.
are those universal municipal procurement rules, or is that
State,
Barnstable?
state,
That's state?
it's all state.
For municipalities?
Yes,
Okay,
Gimmings is currently working on getting the food truck out of there and cleaning out all the freezers in preparation for next season, basically taking everything of theirs off site. We are working on an extension of their lease or probably more likely development of a license to enable their return in the spring. That part of things is a little bit tricky, but it's being handled by asset management right now. I haven't heard much on that lately, but we're trying to figure out how we can create a license and navigate the liquor license issues that come with not having a building.
Their lease runs out in March.
Correct.
Why are we automatically extending their lease?
We're not.
We're
We
not.
can't. No, we can't. We have a 2-year option. We have to tell them by the end of this month,
Right,
90 days.
December.
Right. We cannot renew the lease the way it's currently written.
because you
We
don't
just
have a
can't.
building.
We don't have a building, none of it applies,
Right.
you know. So instead, we're trying to work out maybe just a 1-year license with them. A very stripped down version for them to be able to come in and basically mirror what they did this past season. It's complicated because,
Is it an MOU or a contract?
no, it would be a license just like David Denellen has with us
Oh,
to
okay.
perform, instruction
Yep, yep.
on property.
Yep.
It's not necessarily a lease, it's more just it's a little more formal than an MOU,
Okay,
but it's a legitimate on paper license saying you can do business on our property under these parameters. As opposed to a lease, which makes them more of a tenant
right.
than an independent contractor. Right.
So just flesh that out for me then, Jesse. So next year, we anticipate having a food truck just like we had this year, run by these people who had that,
That would be best case scenario. That's what we're hoping for, is to have them back, or somebody else in that same form.
well, this was the original point of my question. If the lease runs out in March, last year, you and I and Mary were part of a committee that renewed the
Yep.
lease upstairs, and I think that worked out great. Everybody I know loves the place upstairs. It was terrific. Is there gonna be any process by which there is a committee to select someone to run that food truck? Do you feel that's necessary?
Right now, no, because we have no bidders to review.
Well, have we advertised it?
No, when we're still under contract.
Right, I
for-
know that,
For
but I'm
another
talking
3.5
about
months.
to the end of March.
I don't know what the method would be for gauging interest. It wouldn't be an RFP, which this was,
Right.
a much more formal, I don't really know. I'm waiting on feedback from David Anthony at Asset Management to try to figure out, he's basically like the landlord for the town, he deals with all the leases and basically waiting to hear back from what he thinks we can do. Obviously, we don't want to do anything that creates a situation where somebody could say, why didn't I get a chance to bid? But that would be a great problem to have. I mean, last year, when this happened, when the pipe burst and we didn't know what we were gonna be able to offer, there was nobody out there looking to come in and do this. We're happy and lucky that Gimme stepped up and rented that truck and pivoted and completely changed their model. Otherwise, we could have had nobody. And that's a very real possibility for this coming year, I hate to say it.
With all, again, I would just like to talk out loud about this because it's so important an issue. If I may say, seemingly everywhere you go, there's a food truck today.
Mhm.
Somebody has put a food truck somewhere, and they're doing very successfully. A food truck at a golf course or a restaurant at a golf course is a different animal
Right.
than just in the regular public area. I'm not disputing that. But it would seem as if our first step might be to advertise and see if there is any interest.
And that might be what happens. That might be what comes back from asset management saying, we're gonna post this, see what the, gauge the temperature of what's out there for this. I don't wanna be pessimistic, but I mean, we essentially did that last year and no real biters. I don't know.
It was
I don't know yet.
complicated last year in the sense that Gimme still had
Correct.
the lease.
Right.
And I don't think, if I had a food truck, I don't want to necessarily go into a place where somebody else already has a lease.
Of course.
So I ignore that.
Sure,
As
sure.
no matter how well we advertise.
It was messy.
Well, it was a messy situation, and it's
Still is.
nobody's fault.
Right. I don't know yet.
My feeling, is now we have this a little bit more open situation where after
Right.
March, we're not
You're right. It's not as limited.
obligated to gimmies.
Right. But a lot of these food trucks that you discuss, a lot of them have one-day temporary liquor licenses, or they have, that's the problem
Right.
with having you're treating a food truck as just a stationary restaurant at a place that's open 15 hours a day. It is very different than, the guy who sets up shop for a few hours and sells coffee. I don't have a great answer right now.
Okay,
I'm told by my boss that this is being worked out
okay.
at levels much higher than me.
Sure.
Hopefully, I'll have some news by next month because the deadline will have passed and it's assumed they know that the lease can't be renewed. They know that. So that formal letter will go out saying we cannot renew the lease the way it is. And basically a message already has gone out to them saying, we're not gonna be able to renew the lease, but are you interested in doing this? And they're
Sort of a
talking now.
temporary license.
Correct,
Yeah.
a very stripped down version. But I don't have great answers on that right now.
Well, again, we talked about this at a previous meeting, about the fact that the non-member tea times at Hyannis were down,
Mhm.
not surprisingly so.
Yeah, the word's out.
And obviously, one of the reasons is the lack of a 19th hole.
Mhm.
And that's why I personally, and I'm sure everyone else is, very concerned to do whatever we can do to rectify that for this summer.
The red tape is an issue. It really is.
I'm kind of hearing you say that they might be the best option, even though, but I'm also hearing Keith saying we should open it up so that, there's an announcement that there'll be a temporary license available to provide food and drink, and, whoever is eligible or, eligible to fulfill the obligations of that license
Right.
should be able to bid.
The liquor
for it.
license is the
That's the
big
stopper,
issue.
yeah,
Because
that's the
there's no
stopper.
building.
Right, exactly.
That's the big issue.
There
that I'm
might not
being
be
told.
another vendor out there who could do what this fellow does, but there might be.
Yeah.
I mean, to Keith's point, there might be,
I mean, that's, I
right?
don't wanna just pass the buck, but yeah, these are discussions that are happening.
In Ganilla's office?
Yeah, not in mine, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe he could come and talk to us about this.
specifically, sure.
In January, right? We have a meeting in January.
Sure.
And that would be soon enough.
We should, that's 5 weeks from now, we should have more clarity with
About
regards
what's
to this.
happening.
Right, once we get past that deadline and Gimmy's kind of is more under the gun to give us their thoughts.
Yeah,
You know,
okay. Maybe
um,
could we invite Chris?
Sure.
Well, again, when would you think, I totally agree, and Chris Canella mentioned to us when we met at Town Hall that he is more than willing
To come.
more than
Okay.
willing, and I certainly take him at his word. I know we don't have to say another thing about that. But going back to your point about March now, where we might have, no, not might, we will have an answer one way or another because Gimmy's lease
Correct.
will be
Correct.
Right, over.
done with. Um, Is there a month that you think it would be best to have Chris come?
Yeah, the sooner the better. I mean, we're 5 weeks away from the next meeting. I don't. It's a jump ball. It's a coin flip. If he would have any more information in February than he would next month, frankly, and we're probably due. I mean, do we even know if the February meeting will happen? Isn't that
That's right,
typically
that's
when
one that we
The
skip.
February meeting is John, the February meeting is the one we skip,
that's a
right?
rule, right? 'Cause you're
You
We
are,
skipped March last year.
Either February or March,
Either? Okay,
I
so
won't
might
be
as
here
well.
in March.
depending on, who is available.
Right.
To be safe, I'd say sooner.
yeah, John is the official historian of the
Yes,
golf.
he is.
He can certainly
Just
speak.
right, we did,
He can speak
In March,
much
right?
more intelligently on that issue than I can. And most issues, frankly, but this one in particular, he would have a little more clarity because he's having those conversations where I'm getting the information after the conversations happen.
Okay. How does the committee feel about this now, in terms of having Chris come and when you would like to have him come?
I think
And again, in the back of our minds, we're also talking about which meeting we won't have.
Right.
As I think John indicated, we could eliminate, as is tradition, either the February or March meetings.
I'm gonna vote to invite him to the January meeting, and I'm very certain I won't be here in March. so-
Okay, you won't be here in March, all right? Any other feelings about January?
Yeah, I like it.
You like it, okay. Can we
Sure, absolutely.
formally invite him then?
We'll do that tomorrow.
That's great.
Sorry to give you a long-winded, I don't know, but
Yeah.
Okay,
that's where we're at.
I just think it's critical to the financial health of the
course.
course, the operation, to have it settled and good. It has to be good, and, not to kvetch, but one of the things that was very annoying to the women was, we won't be here on Tuesdays. Well, that's when, the women's league plays at Hyannis, and we felt kind of, oh, great, you're not gonna be here on Tuesdays, thanks a lot, and that's a pretty important thing for us to be able
course.
to sit around afterwards and, do the best we could to socialize, so,
well, that's just one item, Suzanne.
No, understood.
In terms of
an example.
Gimmy's performance over literally the past 3 years at Hyannis. So that's why I'm concerned about this.
I guess my point was, this is such an important aspect of the financial health of the course, what it means to the people who play there, so it's a really important issue,
We're,
as you know.
of course.
All right.
So Hyannis Golf Course obviously now closed for the season, for the first time in a long time, as far as the winter goes. As I've stated before, I'm a bit conflicted as to whether I'm rooting for a playable winter or not here. The revenue would obviously be great, but really hoping Old Barnstable Golf Course holds up well if we do in fact have mild weather all winter long. Tavern on the Green, the food and beverage vendor here, is also now closed for the season. They stayed open as long as they could from a staffing and frankly financial viability standpoint. We certainly appreciate that. The golf shop will, just like the trailer was at Hyannis, the golf shop will be stocked with snacks and drinks, so we'll at least have something to offer in the way of hydration and calories. But obviously there won't be anything substantial on the food and beverage front until Tavern reopens in early March. So speaking of the Tavern here, we just entered into a contract for a new awning that will be installed this spring. Came in around $14,000. Hopefully we'll get a decent amount of years out of that because the existing one was really on its way out. Revenue, as you can see in the latest report, Susan said I think yesterday, revenue is basically dead even with projections. It's actually a touch better than what you see on paper, and frankly always will be, because the interest on our reserve account takes a long time to post to the applicable month.
Right,
Neither October or November has posted yet, So we can assume another 20,000 or so will hit our books for the time period we're looking at here, that being July through November. I had Susan make a switch on that for the record. We had been posting that interest, that surplus interest, into the month when it was received. But what I asked her to do was retroactively assign it to the month it's actually should be accounted for. Does that make sense? So like right now, that's why on that revenue report, surplus interest is a 0. Did we get interest this month? Yes, we did, but it was attributable to September. So we're always gonna be 6 to 8 weeks behind on the surplus interest. It's been great lately. It's been almost 10 grand a month. But we're always gonna be a little behind on that. So the number you're looking at, there was, I think, 680, I mean, it was under $1,000 variance.
636?
Right, that's actually, you can probably add at least $15,000 to that number,
Oh,
because the surplus interest will hit. With regards to the remainder of this fiscal year, essentially December 1st through the end of June, the good news is that projections are only 86% of the actual revenue from last year's December through June. So real numbers, we're budgeted to do a little over 2 million from now through the end of June. And last year's actual number was a little over 2.4. So that gives me confidence that we will hit our numbers, hopefully make another contribution to the reserve account. For the record, about 170,000 is being used from reserves to balance the current year's budget. That's nothing new. We always borrow from reserves to balance the budget, at least on paper. What that essentially means is that we need to beat our revenue numbers by 170,000 before any contribution is made.
oh,
This, of course, does not account for any potential expense savings, which would be the other way we could contribute. But frankly, I have no interest in holding any funds back from our regular operating budget. I'm much more focused on maximizing revenue rather than cutting corners on the expense side of things. I don't really have anything else there. I know Suzanne, the Turkey Open topic, just reminding you, but I don't have anything else.
yeah. Well, before we get to the Turkey Open,
sure.
There's I don't know if this number's an artifact, but under the Hyannis revenue, there's like this number floating there, 24,542, under the over-under column. What's that?
That's the total of Old Barnstable. That's the total variance.
The total variance
Yeah, see,
is
that's
24.
700 plus
Got it,
23
got
and
it.
42,
All right.
right,
I didn't
right.
see it.
Yeah, so
label there.
so
Okay.
Old Barney basically was dead flat. They only missed the mark by 700.
Right.
Whereas
Oh,
Hyannis
got it.
missed
That's
the mark
what the
by-
difference is.
Right, it's the total.
Sure. Well, Jesse is allowing me to talk about the Turkey Open and the success. This is a fundraiser for the local food pantries. I believe one of them is the Veteran Service Center, and the other one's a local food pantry. And Mary runs this tournament in early November every year. And this year, there was a great turnout, and she raised over $2,000 in supermarket gift cards to distribute to folks before the Thanksgiving holidays. So I just wanted to take a moment and, thank her so much for doing that and praise her for that work, because it's a lot of work running one of these tournaments. And I know that the food pantries really, really appreciated it, as usual.
Yep, absolutely. Again, the involvement of the golf program in the community, not just with the 1,200 or so pass holders.
That's right.
Jesse, just one question. I can understand why you have less than 100% on the estimate. How did you determine that 86%? Why did you use that number? Is there any logic to that? You said that.
Well, that's a real number.
That's a real number, but
Right.
why 86? Not 90 or 85 or? Has that always been used?
No,
Okay.
no, I didn't set out to do that. My revenue projections, I learned the first time not to be too aggressive. 2 years ago, my first time doing this, I submitted what I thought were realistic revenue projections, and they got pushed back to me and said, way too aggressive, knock those down. Sure enough, we contributed $600,000 of surplus. So, not that, I don't want to say I told you so, but my projections were pretty good. So this year I learned my lesson and I said, okay, I'm gonna temper it. And I also front loaded it. So July through where we're at now, were much more aggressive numbers. They're probably more closer to 95% or so.
Okay,
You see what I'm saying?
absolutely.
And then I left May and June a little on the very conservative side purposely, so that if we enter the 1st of June and we're even remotely close to our numbers, I can be confident that we're good.
Oh,
So I kind of front loaded the budget a little bit on the forecasting side,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
yeah,
So,
and that 80, that number, that percentage, 86, you just thought that was right this year?
yeah, last year we did about 2.4 December through January, and this year's projections are a little over 2 million. In a perfect world, I would have budgeted 2.3 and change, but I didn't want to,
Sure, okay,
then run. It's easy to say you're going to make it, then you're on the hook for it.
right, right.
And the last thing I want to do is have to say to James in May, hey, I need you to cut $100,000 out of your budget because I went crazy with the projections.
James.
And that, right. Well, I always say James because he's the one, Mary and Tom spend a good bit of money, but a lot of that is on merchandise, and that there's an offset to that.
Yeah.
Whereas in theory, there's no offset to what he's spending.
just the love of all the golfers
Yeah.
in Barnstable.
So yeah, that number was I don't want to say it was an arbitrary number, but it was a conservative.
Yeah, sometimes I ask these questions just for the benefit
Sure.
of our TV audience. They hear something like that, and people sometimes wonder,
Yeah.
and then we can clarify.
And again, that 170 that's being used, so in theory, if we spend the entire budget to the penny, and we beat our revenue projections by 170,000, that's a net zero for the surplus and everything.
Right,
Not taking from it, not contributing, net zero.
okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's always been the case. We've very rarely actually needed it, but they've never have we been allowed to budget enough revenue to cover the anticipated expenses. We've always, at least on paper, used money from surplus. It doesn't work out that way. We end up doing better.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
You've become quite a financial whiz kid over the last 3 years. You've grown, I think, in this
Thank you.
area.
other questions for Jesse? No other questions for the Director of Golf? All right, seeing none, I think we can adjourn. I want to wish everyone in our audience happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, everything possible to everyone in our audience. And
Festivus.
the same thing to all of the
Festivus.
members of the golf program, the guys and the women who are working in the fields, and hope everybody has a terrific holiday season.
Same to you, Keith. Same
Well,
to you.
thank you. All right, do we have,
Motion to adjourn.
okay,
I'll second that.
Jeff has made a motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the meeting is adjourned.